Hello and welcome to episode 5 of Oddlando. My name is Otter and this is my Florida inspired build in City Skylines 2. Previously, we got the basics of the city laid out and it's now time to expand. Before the city grows too big, though, I wanted to set aside some park space for locals to enjoy. I'm, of course, talking about the huge beach inlet park that you're seeing on the inland side of Oddlando's peninsula. Because this video will be more of terraforming and park design, I'm going to skip over the typical lore introduction format that I've been following previously, and I'll just get into what we're planning on doing today. Thank you again to everyone who's been supporting the channel. We're close to 150 followers, and I'm super excited to see what we can do by the end of summer. If you're enjoying the series so far, please consider subscribing to my channel and turning on the notifications. It helps me out a ton. So to start, this build is very obviously Florida inspired, especially as I'm using the old Florida map by BT Seminole. I wanted to maximize some of our beach access and create a decent sized park that the tourists might not know about, but the locals will all love. I saw this inlet had been cut out of the peninsula's shape, and it was perfect for something fun to build. This video is technically a rework, and I had already done this build on Oddlando on stream while I was testing a plugin that would allow me to both record and stream at the same time. I liked how it turned out on the stream, but I wanted to redo it and format it just a little bit differently, and so here we are. We're basically going to use the sand base to cover anything and everything related to the actual beach park. Then using the light wet sand, we're going to roughly trace the white water line. And finally, we're going to use the dark wet sand just above the current water level to highlight the current height. Real quick, I want to give a huge shout out to Sully, the creator of these high quality surfaces. I had previously only used the flat base game sand textures, and it's not great. Sully's textures not only add depth, but also realism to your build. Huge shout outs and thanks to Sully and any others who may have helped with this mod. With that being said, and the basic visuals of the park down, I decided I didn't want to use parking lot assets for this piece of the build, and instead opted for parking roads. With the actual parking in place, I decided to actually enclose them with a one-way loop around them, hopefully to try and get rid of some of the gridlock effect that City Skylines is sort of notorious for in any sort of enclosed space. I also noticed a few spots where small level detailing could go a long way, and so I decided to add a few lamps to highlight the crosswalks, and then a few rows of palm trees just to kind of bring up the liveliness of this beach park. Next, with Harbor Master Jay's suggestion, I created a district for the park itself and added roadside parking costs. Unlike parking assets, we're typically unable to add a parking fee directly to road networks, but with district roadside parking policies, we are able to circumvent. For a few additional points of attraction, I wanted to add a few hobby parks, and I was actually surprised that the skate park almost perfectly fit the length of the parking rows I had already set up. I also added basketball courts, an outdoor gym, and some sidewalks to prepare for the next step of this project. And I adjusted the sand textures just a little bit further back to technically include these smaller parks on the beach section. In true Floridian fashion, what would a view of the beach be without some big old condos blocking it? So I threw in some typical oversized high density condo looking assets to take up these two blocks right in front of the park, and specifically tried to find assets which already had some sort of parking garage attached instead of external parking lots or street parking. As you can tell, I try to avoid the painter approach to cities, so of course I have to also adjust the building's ground textures to fill in the extra space. With this being an oversized park, I wanted to add an additional entrance to allow more access to the park overall. The plan for this wasn't to go into crazy detail, so I just grabbed the intersection of one of my neighborhoods, pulled it out, and threw in a tennis court and some beachside parking. I did want to go more detailed with the section, but I honestly didn't want to spend 30 minutes working on a sub area of a project that won't really get much visibility in the first place, so I opted just to use the medium parking lot. I also noticed that the road ended up kind of having this weird wonkiness with the terrain heights, and that's just due to how steep the hill is and the fact that these parking lots do try their best to sit level with themselves. So I just did a really basic fix. I took a dirt road, encompassed it with retaining walls, and then just used Move It to adjust the actual node heights and just kind of level everything out. Obvious thing right now is that we're missing the actual reason for creating this parking lot in the first place: pedestrian access to the park. I had already wanted a reason to use the covered pedestrian bridges for something, and this was good enough reason for me. Realistically, in Florida, most of our beach bridges are typically just wooden walkways, and I'm sure this is mostly due to hurricanes, and pedestrian bridges are obviously going to be cheaper to repair or replace as wood than they are metal bridges. In game, however, we don't really have any crazy weather events yet, outside of maybe tornadoes. So I'm not exactly worrying about that type of infrastructure planning. Just throw in the bridge, move on. Anyways, I decided to use the invisible walking paths instead of walkways once they're over the bridge, just because I wanted people walking on the actual beach, not a designated path looking thing. You'll see later in the video, this ends up looking perfect. I then went and included a sand road so that the lifeguards are able to drive up and down the beach, and also decided to include some beach parks along this route as well. I don't know what it is with these outdoor gyms, but I just feel like no matter where you put them, they always end up looking good to me. I don't know. So I put them at the end of this roundabout, and then also decided to throw in some of these like beach parks. I don't remember who made this mod, and I'm sorry for that. But these assets are really awesome. They're part of a basically a modular beach parks mod pack on Paradox Mods, and seriously, they look pretty much all of them look really awesome. I personally didn't want to go with the one that have the sidewalk paths, just because getting rid of the sidewalks proved to be quite an annoying task, and just not, again, I didn't really want a lot of these paths around the park, and so it just didn't really go with what I was working on. The only thing I found to be a little bit frustrating was the fact that these beach mods do use the actual base game sand texture instead of just no texture at all, and so if you place them over Sully's sand textures, getting rid of them is a pain. They actually, the base game sand texture sits lower than the modded sand textures, and I had a couple times where I used the actual bulldozer, selected the textures deleter, and accidentally ended up deleting the Sully's textures, and so 1.5 million game save reloads later, I just decided to start, stretching the actual surfaces like you just saw me do. Next section that was needed was obviously some landscaping, so I just grabbed the Sylvester palm and royal palms and kind of scattered them out throughout the beaches here, and I kind of just used one of the biggest brushes I could find that would cover the entire place, and then just cranked the brush strength down to about 40, and yeah, I mean, you can see I just threw them wherever. I'm gonna go ahead and clean up after myself and take a lot of these out of the water, but to start with, it wasn't a bad usage of the brush tool. Finally, I added in some zoning, which just consisted of some very low zone commercial area right in front of these tennis parks, and then also some regular low density commercial just along the strip of the beach. And finally, I ended up adding some row homes in between these commercial areas and the high school. If you enjoyed this video, drop a thumbs up and let me know in the comments what else you think Oddlando needs. Next week, we'll be setting up some basic infrastructure for public transportation and giving citizens and tourists a few outside bus connections. I had actually intended on doing that this episode. However, I've been super swamped with my new job that I started this month, and so getting some time in to edit videos was actually a little bit chaotic the past 2 or 3 weeks. I've now got my schedule kind of worked out, and so this will make it a lot easier for future videos. We're also going to be creating a new connection from the highway to our city via McCormick to allow industrial vehicles access to the highway without bringing all of the traffic through the main city. We're also working on getting 500 subscribers, so if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell to get notified when I post a new video. Recently did a poll asking if I should change the upload schedule from Sundays to Mondays or Wednesdays, and Wednesdays won. So if you're curious why this video was uploaded off schedule, it actually wasn't. Thanks again for watching. Don't forget to leave a thumbs up, and I'll see you next week.